I want to have a 40-hour work week. 40 of those hours cannot be on the job, but I need to get paid for 40 hours. I need to be able to get paid for 40 hours a week, but that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm spending 40 hours on the job. So, how do I charge for that? Hey, what's up, guys and girls? Back again with another recording of the Midweek Modern Craftsman. Hope you guys are having a good week. Yesterday was a Monday. I was tired. I don't know why. I woke up tired. Sunday, I woke up tired. Monday, I woke up tired. I guess a lot on my plate, a lot going on. Feeling a little bit stressed with all of it, but just trying to remain present and understand that I'm going to get done what I can get done, and what I can't get done, that's just going to be the way it's going to be. That, there's more important things um, than stressing about what I can't get done and how much I can accomplish in a day. So yesterday was a bit of a Monday, tough getting going, busy day, got a lot of stuff done and was very productive, but mentally, definitely one of those days where I felt like there was a lot ahead of me this week and not necessarily looking forward to the challenge so much. But I feel better today. It's Tuesday. I record on Tuesdays. Tomorrow will be Wednesday, halfway through the week. I have my first enduro race this weekend, the first one of this year. Hopefully the weather holds out. Looks like it's going to be nice. So I'm racing that with a couple of buddies. Looking forward to that. Anxious about that. Apprehensive about that. First race of the year, but excited about it. So looking to get through this week into the weekend, get a ride on the bike quickly Saturday, and then Sunday morning all day. I'll be out of the house early. The race will be Sunday, so we'll see how that goes. Feel good, riding pretty good. Gonna race on a different bike this year. Maybe. Well, it wasn't my intent, but I'm having some issues on my two-stroke with power delivery, and I don't have 100% confidence in that bike right now. I don't feel myself on it, so I'm riding my four-stroke, which I feel good on. I may give up a little bit of time on it in some tight stuff, give or take. I don't know. We'll see how it goes. It's hard to gauge. You feel fast. I feel fast on both of them. So we'll see how that goes. But I'm excited for the week and excited to get racing season going. But on to business. So this week, my blog post is going to be based around a conversation that I had with a nice guy named Andy, excuse me, down in Baltimore, Maryland. I think I spoke with him last week. We were having a conversation. He's small owner operator. He had a previous career and made a change, and he's working for himself right now. A lot of owner operator stuff, small business, is not looking to have a massive business. He likes the hands-on aspect of working, similar to what I'm doing now. And I can tell that he is working a lot. And I was trying to determine how he's charging, how he's determining his rates. And while having the conversation with him, I realized that although a lot of people, when they're bidding jobs early on or when they determine a rate, they're looking at overhead as far as, excuse me, my truck, um, your insurances, if you're renting a shop space, your tools, the normal obvious overheads that they can account for, and they're not necessarily looking at the more nuanced um, overheads, or what I basically classify as inefficiencies within work when you're a small shop, or even when you're looking to charge or budget for a employee. I think that there's costs within that overhead that people aren't aware of or don't account for, and it's something that I did for a long time. So this is all going to come down for how you want to account for this. If you want to put it on your labor rate, if it's an aspect of a markup on an employee, a markup on yourself, if it's just broken out as an overhead fee, um, you have to figure that out. But the important part is that you are actually charging for this, because for myself, I didn't charge for this for a long time. I thought that I'd charge for it, but I didn't. And in hindsight, I really wasn't. I wasn't accounting for this. To quit alluding to what I'm talking about and just inform you guys more so on what I'm talking about, when you are running a business and you're an owner operator, or you're the owner of the business, and your responsibility is spread across many different trades, tasks, you're doing secretarial work, you're picking up materials, you're setting jobs up, you're meeting with customers, you you feel as though all of those extras need to be done after work hours. When you're first getting into business, you don't know how to charge appropriately. You might not be able to hire an employee full time or part time. You might not be able to hire a bookkeeper and accountant, but that doesn't mean that you shouldn't be charging for those things. And what I'm getting at here, and this doesn't really change. I'm 12 years into business right now, and when I need part time help, I get part time help. I'm subcontracting more work out. I'm self performing certain aspects. But I used to think that I would be able to work 40 hours a week on the job. And what I was doing is I was working probably 60 hours or more a week, but it wasn't productive work. I wasn't showing up to the job and working 12-hour days, um, and just getting 12 hours of work done. Essentially, what I was doing is I was spending 10 hours, 8, 10 hours on the job. I was picking up materials before work. I was meeting with customers before and after work. I was unloading my truck at 6 o'clock when I got home from work. Um, and none of that was during my 8-hour workday. And I should probably put up air quotes right there, 8-hour workday, because they never were 8 hours. I was always on the job for longer because I didn't feel like I was making money. So, um, what I didn't realize until probably the past couple years, when I really became transparent with my pricing and developing spreadsheets and refining my numbers and tracking job costs and efficiencies, and really looking at where I make money and how much time I can spend on a job, I realized that if I want to work 8 hours a day on the job, I need to devote another potentially up to 8 hours a week to picking up materials, doing material takeoffs, unloading my truck, breaking down job sites, setting up job sites, paperwork, invoicing. And at 37 at this point and having a family, I don't want to be doing that at 10 o'clock at night. I don't want to be doing that at midnight. I did that for a long time, and it wasn't sustainable for me, and it wasn't healthy for me, and it wasn't good for me or my family. So I've realized that for simplicity's sake, if I want to have a 40-hour work week, 40 of those hours cannot be on the job, but I need to get paid for 40 hours. Some weeks I'll work a little bit more, maybe some weeks I work less, but I need to be able to get paid for 40 hours a week. But that doesn't necessarily mean that I'm spending 40 hours on the job. So how do I charge for that? Um, that's where it gets a little bit complicated, and I'm going to simplify this. And on my blog post, you can read this. So hop onto the website and check it out. It may make more sense. Excuse me. I just ate breakfast, and I feel like I'm burping. I'm not going to try and hide it. I was burping. Um, so excuse me. Very rude, disgusting. I'm a pig. So for simplicity's sake, I'm going to. I wrote this in the blog post, but hopefully this makes sense to you guys and girls. if I want to charge $75, and these hours aren't these numbers are just numbers that I chose that I think probably a lot of people base their rates on on an average throughout the country. But if I want to charge $75 an hour for my work, right? Somebody comes to me and I say, I can do that job for time and material. And this could be for budgeting too, right? You're estimating a job and you want to say, I'm going to spend 40 hours on this job. And obviously, there's a ton of different business models. There's a ton of different ways to do this. You could charge for what the cost of you is, the cost of your time is, the cost of an employee. You can have your overhead and markup that you're putting on top of that you're breaking out. It depends on what your customer base is, what your business base is, and what your model looks like. I think that a lot of people within our industry look at everything as a composition of time and material, which there's nothing wrong with that, but your rate for time needs to either have a separate markup for all of your overheads or it needs to be accounted for within there. And I think that that's where a lot of us get hung up. All right, pulling up my notes here. So I want to charge $75 an hour for myself, and I'm I'm going to ideally I'm getting paid for 40 hours a week. In a perfect world, I could show up at 8, leave at 4:30, take a lunch and get paid 8 hours of work per day per week. 52 weeks in a year. Let's see what my numbers look like here. That would be 5 days a week, 260 working days. I'm charging $75 per hour, 40 hours per week, 52 weeks per year. I could earn $156,000 in a year, essentially what my labor sales would be. And if I don't have a separate markup on top of that covering all these other costs, then that's not my profit. That's not my earnings. That doesn't account for any of that. If your $75 an hour rate accounts for all of that, your profit is a smaller number. But you just have to make sure that that's in whether it's in your built into your rate and hidden for lack of a better term or added on top of that. So that assumption is what I always based my mindset off of, that I could make 150 $200,000 a year and it would be based on my rate. But what I didn't realize is that there's going to be very few amount of weeks that I can spend 8 hours a day of un undivided work, um, where I'm on the job and I have my belt on and there's no distractions and I'm just getting work done. There's a lot of stuff that goes into work where I'm taking a phone call or I'm cleaning paintbrushes or I need to get invoicing out. I need to pick up materials. I need to run to the lumber yard. So unless I work 10, 12, 14-hour days to try and get those 40 hours on the job with my belt on, I need to get those 40 hours with my belt on. Then everything else that I have to do based on my business has to be above and beyond that. So 8 hours a day on the job, and then all of the other 2 to 4 hours per day needs to be either before or after work. And that's what I did for a long time. And I was burning myself out because I was under this misconception that I can make 150, $200,000 a year um, by working like I worked. And the issue that lies within that is that you're never going to be so efficient running a small business or being an owner operator that you're going to be able to spend 40 hours a week plus all of the other costs on top of that. So what I ended up doing is essentially saying, "Hey, what if instead of I don't want to work after work. I don't want to work 10, 12, 14-hour days anymore. Um, if if I wanted 40 hours on the job per week, I would have to be belt on and I would have to hire somebody to do all of the rest of that stuff. If I hired somebody to pick up all my materials for me, to clean my paintbrushes, to load my truck, to unload my truck, to do invoicing, accounting, and I do pay people to do these things now. Not all of them, and depending on the time, but people are paying for this. I would account for that and I would charge my customers for that. If I pay my accountant however much money per month to do my books and submit my taxes, that's a very clear number that I can add to my overhead and the cost of doing business in a year, and I'm not using myself for essentially free labor, saying, "Hey, I don't have to hire an accountant. I can do this all myself after hours and it's free." It's not free. Your time shouldn't be free. That's a business related cost that you should be charging for. And just because you can do it for free doesn't mean that you should go put 8-10 hours a day with your bags on and then do that after hours and not have that price and that time reflected in the cost of your doing business. So again, for simplicity's sake, let's say that the 40 hours a week, essentially the 260 days a year is unrealistic, because that would be if I worked 40 hours a week, 52 weeks a year, no sick time, no downtime, no days where there's inspections. It would just be a perfect scenario. You took no vacation time. It's impossible, and that's not how normal people work and normal people live. So let's say I can safely work 4 days a week, 32 hours on the job, and the other 8 hours is spent doing work related tasks that aren't necessarily billable to that project. So essentially, that would be, let's see, I know that I did the math here somewhere. I want to see the difference in all right, so 4 days a week, 52 weeks a year, accounting for sick days, vacations, inefficiencies. This leaves you 208 days of actual work in a year. So rather than saying I want to earn $156,000, well, let's just keep the same number. I want to earn 156,000, or I want to have $156,000 in labor sales for myself in a year. And instead of saying that I have a potential for 260 work days in a year, now if I can safely spend 4 days a week working on the job with belt on and 1 day doing everything else, now I can only spend 208 days on the job. All of those other days are costs associated with my work and with my job, but they're not necessarily billable to that customer. They're billable to all of my customers for that year, but not to this specific customer. Um, so I take that $156,000 and I now divide that by the 208 days, and then divide that by 8 hours. And that comes out to $93.75 per hour, which to me is more realistic. So if I want to be working 4 days a week, 8 hours a day, and then having 1 day a week, and this is just based on averages, right? Maybe I work 5 days a week to do the entire job, and then I take a week off between jobs to catch up on everything. Um, this is just based on approximates on about how much work volume I do in a year, and you have to figure this out for yourself. But essentially, I'm charging $18.75 more per hour to be able to still have the same labor sales volume and get paid for those other 8 hours per week that I need to spend on business related tasks that aren't necessarily billable to this customer, where I'm not billing them for the 32 hours Monday to Thursday, and then they're getting an invoice for Friday where I unloaded my truck. I went to the paint store. I did invoicing. So it's harder to justify that to them, even though that's the cost of doing business. They don't necessarily see a tangible return there for them. So that number is built into my price, right? So now instead of charging $75 per hour, assuming I can work 30 hours a week on the job, I'm going to charge $93.75 and assume that I can work 32 hours per week on the job. Maybe I work more some weeks, maybe I work less. It all depends. This is basically averages that I'm looking to cover myself and my overhead for the year. So that the difference there between me charging for 260 days versus 208 days is $31,200. So I'm charging $31,200 over the course of the year to cover all of that downtime, those inefficiencies, the loading, the unloading, the breaking down job sites, running to get this, the headaches that are associated with business that you can't necessarily allocate to a project. And when you look at it like that, $31,000 doesn't seem like a lot at all when you're figuring this into your overhead, right? Again, it comes down to $18.75 per hour on your labor rate. But at least I'm charging for that. If I hired um, personnel to fulfill all of those roles within my business that I do that I want to be getting paid for, but aren't necessarily belt on tasks, I think it probably cost me more than $31,000. That's a bargain to my customers that's the price that is built into my overhead for all of that other work. And these aren't my exact numbers, but if you're in that $75 to $100 range, and you essentially are going to devote, let's see, it's 52 days a year to all of this stuff. That's a very fair rate. You're not gouging, and you're now having less pressure on yourself to try and get 40 hours on the job per week. And again, if you work this out that you can work 40 hours in a week and work this job through, and it's 6, 8 weeks, and then you can take 3, 4, 5, 7 days to get set up and catch up on things. That's all how you structure your business. If you want to work 40 hours a week and hire somebody to do the rest of this, understand that this is the type of money that you have set aside to cover that in a year. So if that's going to cost you more than $31,200, you need to be charging more than that. If you figure out what it costs to have an accountant, what it costs to bring somebody on part-time and have the insurance on them to load and unload, to run around and get materials, to be typing up invoices, you need to figure out what that's going to cost. So in this example, it's costing me $31,000 to do. So if it's going to be more than that, you need to ensure that you account for that and charge for that. So for a lot of you guys and girls, this may be common sense, but I think what happens, and what happened with me, is I started out essentially saying, "Hey, I want to make $50 an hour," and then that's $400 a day, and then $2,000 per week. And I when I just started out, I'm 23, and I'm like, okay, I can make $100,000 per year, and then I'm going to add my truck and my insurance and all those very clear, definitive overheads onto that. But I just didn't ever account for all of the downtime that you have in a day. That if you are strictly charging for the time that you spend on a job, and it's very difficult to get 40 hours on the job a week if you're doing everything without working before work and after work. So this can be um, this can be carried over and reflected in your business structure when you have employees as well. Understand that the cost of you having an employee, you may not get 40 hours of efficiency out of them. So if it's a helper, you need to ensure what you're actually getting out of them based on their rate, what the overhead costs are associated with that employee, and ensure that your customers are paying that. Because to think that I'm going to have an employee and they're just going to progress and then the mistakes are going to go away, they aren't. They're always going to be there. And that person's going to progress, and then you're going to have to bring another entry level person in. So the mistakes are going to be consistent and they're going to be there. So that's just a part of business. And you cannot fund that on every single job. And while it does not sound fair to say my customers shouldn't be paying for mistakes, what we do is not perfect. We're working in an imperfect world with a lot of different personalities, a lot of different hands, trades, materials that aren't perfect, and every situation is different. There's a learning curve and there's mistakes and costs associated with our business that are unavoidable and they're always going to be there. And that needs to be built into the cost of your doing your business. If you bid a job and you assume that your employee is going to work for 40 hours a week and there's going to be no mistakes and you're going to charge the customer exactly for that or budget for that, you're shooting yourself in the foot because the project is not going to go that smoothly. So you need to account for that. You need to account for those buffers. You need to account for those after work hours that either you're devoting and it's charity on your behalf because the customer's not paying for it and nobody's paying you, or if you're paying an employee to do that, you need to make sure that it's not coming out of your pocket, that's billed to the job that the customer's paying. um, so again, I would recommend hopping on the website, the new website, moderncraftsman.co, and checking out this blog post because it'll be easier to follow the mathematical equations throughout the written text. But the most important thing for me here is when you are bidding jobs, when you are developing your rates, there needs to be a buffer in there, and you need to account for all of the extra time that goes into business. Every job that you approach is not going to go perfectly. And if you price that job based on perfection and an expected level of conditions that are going to make this job go as smoothly as possible, you're not necessarily leaving money on the table, but you're costing yourself money because no job is going to go that way. So you need to account for this. You need to account for all the after hours work. And you need to realize that getting 40 hours of undivided, unhindered work in a week, you're either going to have to put in 50 hours on the job or 48 hours on the job and say 8 hours of that is a wash, or you're going to have to put 40 hours in the job in a week and then work 8 hours before or after work. And we do that being self-employed and being small businesses because that's just, we see that we can bring value that way, or it doesn't cost us. Our labor, our time is free. But you look at any other industry, if you hire an attorney, if you go to a doctor and they're doing work above and beyond 40 hours, or you just have an employee, if you have an employee and they worked 6 extra hours doing this stuff, you would pay them. You wouldn't expect them to be doing that 6 hours for free. And if this 6 hours of extra work or 8 hours of extra work a week is not built into your overhead and you're not charging for that, or that's not built into your hourly rate and reflected in the inefficiencies and the downtime of working as a small business, then you will not be profitable or as profitable as you should be. Again, so I would recommend hopping on, especially this week, reading this blog post and looking at your numbers and determining if you think that you are um, adequately charging for your services. And one of the reasons I did this blog post is having this conversation with Andy, and he was surprised to hear that I really try and work 40 hours a week and that it's not 8 hours a day on the job, and that there's cost and business related costs that I'm charging my customers for that are built into my rate to compensate for the downtime and the inefficiencies, and just the cost of doing business that I may not be hiring somebody out, but my customers should be paying for because they're hiring me for my services. And if I weren't in business and I weren't working for them, I wouldn't have the cost of unloading a truck or securing materials. That's all related to their jobs. And rather than try and determine or charge a customer for those hourly rates in my spreadsheet, I'd rather break and amortize that cost down based on what I would say would be the sum of all of my projects in a year. So that works better for me. You can determine what works best for you and your setup and your structure of your business because every market's different, every business structure is different. Everyone wants to charge a different rate, but make sure that you understand if you want to work 40 hours in a week on the job, um, you're going to have to put a fair amount of time in above and beyond that. That's bags off related time that you should be charging for, because it's the cost of doing business. So I'd be interested to hear how many of you guys have done this, how many of you have had this realization. I know that everyone talks about it, and I spoke about it early in my career, but I had my head down and I was bidding projects and I had employees, and I had these numbers in my head of what I could make in a year. And looking at my numbers when I wasn't there, I doubled down. I put more work in, and I sent employees home, and I stayed late on the job. I did all my work and my estimates and my emails before and after work hours, because they weren't, in air quotes, costing me, but they did cost me. They cost me a lot. They cost me family time. They cost me mental sanity. They cost me physical health. I got pretty sick twice in 1 year from being overworked and essentially depleting my adrenal glands. And ended up getting carted to the hospital. Once Rachel had to rush me there with the kids in the car, and the second time I got pulled out on a stretcher in full anaphylactic shock because of this. So it costs me in ways that are far greater than the financial implications of doing so. So that would be my suggestion to you guys, to really look at your numbers and not offer your services for free or work above and beyond the hours in a week that you're charging for. And if you are, and that's what you want to do, and you want to hustle and you want to grind, make sure that you are compensating yourself appropriately for doing so. So again, hop on the new website. It's moderncraftsman.co, and let me know what you think. I've been enjoying these. I've been enjoying the consulting calls too. So if that's something that you want to do, Nick offers them, Doug offers them, excuse me, I offer them. Um, I like to think that I'm bringing a lot of value to these people and having these conversations and either reaffirming what they're doing or helping them determine a new direction with their business, personal life, whatever that may be. It could be a technical skill set, a mindset, a practice. I enjoy hopping on a phone call, um, helping people out, and then following up with them. So the impetus for this blog post is based on a phone call that I had last week, and I just thought it was really important. Somebody who was new in business and wasn't necessarily charging for the time, and I know that I did that for a really long time. And I was bearing all financial, physical, and emotional implications of doing that, and I'd like to avoid that for anyone else if possible. So as always, I appreciate you guys, appreciate the support, following along. I love seeing the feedback from everyone. Thank you to our partners, our sponsors. And if you have the time, keep spreading the word. Keep promoting what we're doing. It helps us so much. Go leave us a review. Tell your friends, your family, your neighbors, everyone about what we're doing, and let's help grow this industry and make as positive an impact as possible. So I'll catch you guys next week. Again, I appreciate it, and I'll talk to you soon.